Ron Kershaw, reporting from Stratford.
This is Jessica Savitch, Newswatch 11.
He was a very brilliant guy. He intuitively understood the power of television. Jessica found him very magnetic, not only for that reason, but for another reason. In many ways, he was as troubled as she was. They could have searched the world over and not found partners who would have been as right for them and as disastrous for them.
By now, Jessica's all-consuming ambition had taken shape to be a network anchor by age 30. That meant leaving Houston. Jessica and Ron promised to move on together. Promises were not always kept, and the results were often violent.
He physically beat her time after time after time through a period of years that lasted from Houston into, I guess, her early days at NBC.
Fearful of Ron's disapproval, Jessica downplayed a job interview she had in Philadelphia and promised not to sign anything. But Philadelphia is one step away from the network. She hastily signed an ironclad contract with KYW-TV for a mere $17,000.
Well, Ron hit the ceiling. He knew she couldn't get out of that contract when the networks came calling, which he knew they would. He knew what she had. But he also was furious because she lied to him. They never got over it because it became an emblem of the way she would lie to him for the rest of her life.
Ambition pointed Jessica to Philadelphia, but her heart stayed in Houston. She packed her bags and headed east. She said it took 5 days to make the trip, 2 days for the drive to Philadelphia, and 3 days of U-turns, changing her mind about leaving Ron in Houston.
WCBS Studio Audition, Jessica Savitch, take one.
Network by age 30. It had become Jessica Savitch's mantra. She took one step closer to her dreams by leaping from Houston to KYW-TV in Philadelphia, the 4th largest market in the country.
Jessica had just come from the West, Texas. Comes into Philadelphia, and I thought to myself, oh my God, here comes the chicks in cowboy boots.
It used to be the man left the woman.
What Jessica lacked in experience, she made up for in effort. She was rewarded with success, but her professional achievement would again bring about personal demise.
What about when the woman leaves the home to start a career?
Ron Kershaw, the love she left in Houston, was offered a job at a competing station in Philadelphia. Happiness seemed within reach.
Once the news directors found out his girlfriend was Jessica Savitch at KYW, no one in that market would hire him. And this drove a wedge in that relationship that never really left. It split them apart irrevocably. He was her mentor, and here he was reduced to being jobless when she was being built into a star.
KYW management immediately saw Jessica's star quality, but first they'd have to create a new image for her to achieve star status. The making of Jessica began with different hair, dental work, chic clothes, and voice lessons, image perks that would one day make her envied and resented by her peers.
She had a style that to this day is still being used by almost every blonde anchor person you see on the air.
Now the beauty needed a beat and credentials as a reporter. Her 5-part series on rape broke new ground for TV audiences in the 70s.
Pretty young women are getting raped, but so are their infant children, their mothers, and their 80-year-old grandmothers.
Rape, the ultimate violation, put Jessica on the map.
Good evening, I'm Mort Krim with Jessica Savitch.
In a bold move, management assigned Jessica the major position of co-anchor on the evening news, making her the first woman to anchor a primetime newscast in Philadelphia.
And Jessica Savitch.
That was the conversation throughout the whole station. We're done. They're putting that broad on the 11 o'clock news. That's going to kill us, right? Oh, yeah, it killed us and made us #1.
Mort and Vince are next with the 6 o'clock report.
Even though she was making much less money, Mort Krim, the solo anchor at 11, did not want to share the spotlight, especially with a 25-year-old woman.
Well, you have to understand that I was a typical, traditional 1972 male chauvinist anchor. And I liked women, but I wasn't sure that their place was necessarily sitting beside me on an anchor set, doing what I did.
No one could deny her impact on the ratings. Together, they were known as the Dream Team.
We became #1 in the market. She was a groundbreaker. She was a pioneer in that sense. And by the time she left Philadelphia, of course, her credibility was established.
The father's role as the coach in the whole affair. And you will witness
Jessica kept feeding the viewers what they wanted. She tested the limits of broadcasting with a televised childbirth.
It's beautiful!
And got into the action herself with Lady Law, a series about the first female police officers in Philadelphia.
After a few tries, hands full of blisters, and weeks' worth of aching muscles, I made it in the time allotted.
She got a lot of awards for that series, but believe me, Jessica worked like a dog. I mean, physically work.
Oh, wait. All right, turn it off.
Jessica, I love you so.
Viewers went Jessica crazy. There were songs, newspaper stories, magazine articles, and mountains of mail from loyal fans.
She would get off the phone and, who got that phone call in here? Why did I have to answer that phone call? This guy's been driving me crazy, wants to marry me.
One loyal fan did get through to her. Mel Korn, a successful executive 18 years her senior. Mel endeared himself to Jessica, and they became close friends.
He was a father figure. He was an advertising and marketing person. He'd given her a lot of advice about going to the network. He'd provided the all-important limousine. He'd given her the star trappings that she desperately wanted.
Mel was always there to whisk her away in his limousine at the end of the day. But Ron Kershaw's grip on her heart was undeniable. Jessica's weekend escapes would be with Ron, who was now working in Baltimore, Maryland. The love between them remained strong but twisted.
I came to understand this, that indeed they were addicted to each other. They had to have each other. Their fights proved to each other that they cared deeply. That's the way they saw it.
2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, the phone rang. It was Jessica telling me that Ron was in there. He had forced his way into the apartment. He was on the balcony naked. What should she do? I said, is he close to the edge? She said, yeah. I said, push him. Push him off the damn balcony, get rid of him once and for all. Because the guy was nothing but a heartache to her.
The violence between them became hard to hide.
She was pretty badly beat up. She was pretty well bruised. She was off the air a day or two, and it took a lot of makeup to cover her up after that.
At that point, our family turned against Ron. How dare he hurt our Jessica? We didn't want to hear about Ron anymore in her life. We didn't want Ron anymore in her life, and she knew that. So she didn't talk to us much about him anymore.
The fights and heartbreak became unbearable for both of them. Jessica vowed to never call him again. Ron resigned from his job in Baltimore and disappeared. Personally, Jessica's life was in shambles, but professionally, she was right on track. She caught the eye of the CBS network, but KYW was determined to hold their star anchorwoman to her contract. Jessica was furious. She resented anyone standing in her way.
I don't care if that isn't right. We're not doing it again.
Jess could be very hyper. She could be rather emotional, usually related to something that had happened in the newsroom. She was a perfectionist. Very demanding, very hard on people sometimes, but mostly hard on herself.
What's the matter? 2 for you. A bug bit you. Terrific.
Her star status and temper tantrums were fueling rumors of drug
The matter is under
abuse.
study, not the first study or the second study. Would you ask the young man to please move out of my line? I thought he was going to ride this way.
This is NBC News Update.
Jessica got the call she was waiting for. The NBC network wanted her, and this time the KYW contract was about to expire. At 30 years old, Jessica realized her dream.
All she wanted was to get out of Philadelphia and get to the network. And I think the networks is what kind of destroyed Jessica Savitch.
Jessica's swan song at KYW-TV was not pretty. In her final days, she showed a side of herself that she would never live down.
She got her script out of order. And when she turned to introduce a reporter behind her, the woman wasn't there. It made her look silly on the air. She thought somebody had done it, had gotten her pages out of order just to make her look bad on the air.
Keep your eyes open. That story will come up next as Eyewitness
During the
News
commercial break,
continues.
Jessica let loose with the star attitude that many had come to resent.
She went on this horrific tirade, screaming, yelling, waving her arms in the air, chastising whoever had done this to her.
With only 3 seconds left before returning to the live newscast, she let out a deep breath to recover her self-control.
The country's conversion to the
In
metric
true
system has been a
Jessica
slow
form,
one.
she returned to her